Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our intergroup session on the welfare of turkeys. We will be joined today by Professor Dr. Krautwald Junghans, who recently produced a report on the requirements for turkey husbandry and current animal welfare principles. Ms. Kirsten Vornhagen from DG Sante and René Arts, a turkey farmer from the Netherlands. Turkey welfare is an important issue, and it finally receives the attention it deserves, especially in the light of the emerging and existing research on this topic. We will have the opportunity to put this research into practice with the ongoing fitness check and the revision of the animal welfare legislation that the Commission is currently carrying out. The aim of today's session is to provide us with an understanding of the current scientific research, where the Commission stands on this issue and what is actually happening in practice on the farms. We will listen to 3 speakers and then open the floor for questions and answers. Before we start, as usual, a reminder of the practical aspects of this meeting. This meeting is live streamed on Facebook and will be recorded. The video recording and the presentations will be sent to all participants afterwards. Please keep yourself muted during the whole meeting, and you can add your questions using the Q&A function, and they will be addressed at the end of the session. If you are an MEP and you want to take the floor, please let us know by using the chat box or raising your hand if the function is available to you. Given the short time, I would like to ask all colleagues to be brief with questions and statements. There will be live interpretation from English to German and from German to English. You can use this function by activating it at the bottom of your Zoom window. The debate will be moderated by Reineke Hameleers, from the Intergroup Secretariat. And before we start with this meeting, I would like now to give the floor to my colleague, Sarah Wiene, who has been very, very active on this topic, the welfare of turkeys, to say something about why it is so important that the EU introduces legislative rules for the welfare of turkeys in farming. Sarah, could you please update us on what has been done so far on member state level for turkeys? Thank you.
Vielen Dank, liebe Anja. Guten Tag an alle Zuhörenden. Die Pute ist das vergessene Nutztier, muss man sagen, leider weltweit. Die Pute ist das drittmeist geschlachtete Tier in der EU und wird 3-mal so oft geschlachtet wie zum Beispiel Kuh, Ziege, Schaf zusammen. Und es gibt eben keine EU-Mindeststandards für die Pute. Es ist, muss man sagen, ich war in sehr vielen verschiedenen Ländern und habe mir die Putenhaltung, Putenmast angeschaut, und das ist, muss man leider so sagen, ein Desaster. Der einzige, der Mindeststandards hat, gesetzliche, das ist Österreich. Und da geht es aber eigentlich auch nur um das Gewicht, 40 Kilo pro Quadratmeter. In anderen Regionen in Europa haben sie so zwischen 60 und 70 Kilo pro Quadratmeter. Das bedeutet, wenn eine ausgewachsene Pute um die 20 Kilo wiegt, können Sie sich vorstellen, was das bedeutet. Zumal die Pute in Freiland ungefähr 13 Kilometer auf Nahrungssuche wäre und dann auch beschäftigt werden muss. Pute ist ein sensibles, sehr kluges Tier. So wie wir sie halten, in dieser dreuenden Enge, passieren natürlich auch fehlende Rückzugsmöglichkeiten, eine Unruhe, die Ruhe- und die Schlafzeiten werden beeinträchtigt, und die Puten werden so gestresst, dass dann das berühmte Federpicken oder der Kannibalismus aufkommt. Dafür hat man dann das Schnabelkürzen eingeführt, was eigentlich tierschutzrechtlich vergleichbar ist mit einer Amputation und verboten ist, aber das wird mit Ausnahmegenehmigungen umgangen. Das heißt, im Prinzip ist jede Pute, die wir hier in Europa haben, in konventioneller Haltung, bei den Bios ist das verboten, hat einen Schnabel gekürzt bekommen, Es ist vergleichbar mit einem Verbrennungsgrad von 2. bis 3. Grad, aber der Schnabel ist natürlich auch das Organ für die Pute, um sich zu putzen, um Wasser zu trinken, um Essen aufzunehmen. Also ein katastrophaler Eingriff für die arme Pute. Bei der Züchtung sieht es auch schwarz aus. Es gibt nur weltweit 2 Zuchtunternehmen, die die Putenzucht dominieren, und da wird eben auf Brustmuskel gezüchtet. Das ist ein großes Problem, weil zum einen sich heutzutage die Puten nicht mehr normal vermehren können. Also sie können keinen Sex mehr haben tatsächlich, weil sie einen so überzüchteten Brustmuskel haben, dass das nicht mehr möglich ist. Alle Puten werden sozusagen künstlich befruchtet. Jedes Ei hat keinen Mutter-Kind-Kontakt oder sagen wir mal Eltern-Kind-Kontakt, sondern es gibt also eine reine Produktion, was wir mit Lebewesen anstellen. Es gibt noch sehr viel dazu zu sagen. Das Schwierigste ist sicher diese drängende Haltung und ich finde die Amputation, aber es gibt auch kein wesensgemäßes Futter. Puten bekommen Kraftfutterpellets zu essen, brauchen natürlich eigentlich auch die Möglichkeit zu scharren, essen Insekten, Würmer, aber auch Samen, und das wird auch nicht gewährleistet. Also man kann wirklich sagen, die arme Pute, die wir für so gesund halten und das Fleisch für so mager und für so wahnsinnig gut, ist eine einzige mehr. Denn gerade Puten werden, weil sie in drängender Enge stehen und es keine EU-Mindeststandards, werden besonders oft mit Antibiotika behandelt. 9 von 10 Puten bekommen Antibiotika. Jetzt ganz kurz, also auf der EU-Ebene gibt es keine Richtlinie, wie ich gesagt habe, mit spezifischen Mindestanforderungen in der Putenhaltung. In der Richtlinie 98-58 EG gibt es zwar eine allgemeine Anforderung für das Wohlergehen der Tiere, das wurde da festgelegt, aber die Pute zählt nicht explizit und ganz konkret, sondern nur sehr allgemein dazu. 2014 hat Dänemark, Deutschland und Niederlande, später hat Schweden sich angeschlossen, eine gemeinsame Erklärung zum Tierschutz verfasst, um die Staaten anzuregen, eine Prüfung für weitere landwirtschaftlich genutzte Tierarten, zum Beispiel auch Mastputzen, zu erlassen, und die EU-Regelungen sollten festgelegt werden in diesem Sinne. 2019 wurde dieser Vorschlag an die EU-Kommission herangetragen und wiederholt. Im aktuellen Regierungsprogramm, und das ist nur ein hoffnungsmachender Sidekick von Deutschland, möchte die Bundesregierung sich auf wissenschaftlich basierende Tierschutzmindeststandards für die Putenmast auf EU-Ebene einsetzen. Da hat sich Luxemburg und Italien angeschlossen und ich denke, Tschechien war das. Also wir müssen wirklich dringend handeln, um etwas für die arme Pute zu tun. Nochmal ganz kurz zum Transportwesen, was auch also sehr düster ausschaut. Es ist erlaubt, 12 Stunden Puten ohne Wasser und Essen zu transportieren. Wer eine Vorstellung hat, was das für dieses arme, doch sehr kleine und empfindliche Tier bedeutet, was es schon für uns bedeutet, kann sich vielleicht auch vorstellen, was das für die Pute bedeutet. Insofern bin ich sehr dankbar und froh, dass die Pute heute ein Thema ist. Und ich möchte jetzt das Wort übergeben an Frau Professor Dr. Krautwald-Junghans, die eine sehr spannende Studie dazu gemacht hat. Ich bin sehr froh, dass Sie heute da sind. Wie sagt man so schön, the floor is yours.
Dankeschön. Thank you very much. I try to open my presentation. Okay, thank you for the invitation, first of all. I was asked nearly 1 year ago by the Austrian ministry, I mentioned here above, on doing a research report or an expert report about the minimum requirements for keeping fattening turkeys under animal welfare standards. When we did this, we finally ended with a more than 100 pages report. And we looked at approximately 30-50 peer-reviewed references. These are pictures of our own studies we did under experimental and practical conditions, financed by the German ministries. We're doing this now since 14 years. When we read those references, and we included also postdoctoral theses, for instance, etc., We could not avoid, as we read so many things, to do some side remarks. So beside the required catalogue of requirements, which is a major part, and the detailed comments from the literature, we also included general preliminary remarks, some remarks on the legal basis, and some annexes. Sarah Wini already mentioned the debaking. Interesting progression is going on in Lower Saxony in Germany, because they forbid debaking and they do programs with the farmers nowadays. So we included something. I don't go on this into detail, just let me do one remark on the parent animal flocks. I'm a professor for avian medicine since 37 years now, I think. And I was really astonished that we could not find any scientific literature on how the parent turkey animals are kept concerning animal welfare. So I could imagine that there are problems, similar problems, polydermatitis, injurious feather picking, etc. But this is a black hole, and I think this is, I couldn't believe it. So there has to be some research. Now coming to the major points of the expert report, and without doubt, stocking density is the most discussed issue in this content. However, you always have to keep in mind that it's a multifactorial issue. Reading all the literature, we finally came to this conclusion. You do see here that we recommended as a maximum stocking density, 36 to 40 kilograms live weight per square meter. But when we read the literature, we could have said as lower the stocking densities, as better for animal health. But we also had to keep in mind the economic considerations, because a stocking density of, let's say, 1 kilogram per square meter wouldn't be realistic. And that's why we combined economic and scientific literature. It's already mentioned that the EU doesn't have special requirements. It's different in the different countries. Sweden, for instance, requires stocking densities of 30 if the farmers do not take part in a health program, the same in Germany, but most of the countries don't have any legal provision. There have been attempts to calculate the space requirements of Turkey scientifically, so-called COBA plan, for instance. Those researchers just photographed the animals and then looked at which stocking density, how much stable area is occupied. But to be honest, you can't get this into account, because nobody knows until now in a proper scientific way how much is necessary for the exercise of normal behavior. So we couldn't include this. But we found so much literature on what a high stocking density means for animal welfare. And I just put here some examples. Polydermatitis in our studies in German-wide, we were able to see up to 100% in the slaughterhouse of turkeys suffering from polydermatitis in different degrees, and the reports of other countries are the same. Or injurious feather picking. We don't talk about cannibalism in turkeys because they don't kill the birds and eat the birds, in contrast to chickens, but this is nevertheless a very serious issue, and it's obvious that injurious feather picking occurs more with higher stocking densities. I don't want to go into detail here. Something's obvious, but also for the farmers, it might be interested, and it's a new publication because we have different hybrids within the different years, and they showed that the increase in body mass is decreasing from the 16th week of life if the stocking density increases. Now, this might be a good argument for the farmers. Injurious feather picking, multiple studies on the negative effects of high stocking densities. Interestingly, there was one researcher who looked at small groups, 30 animals experimentally, and he saw the same high amount of feather picking. Also, this was a group of 30, but he was able to prove that this was clearly dependent on the available space. So a small group doesn't mean automatically a good animal welfare, but again, it's dependent, among others, on the stocking density. And then others skeletal system, respiratory stress symptoms or respiratory symptoms. So the list is really large. But if you consider stock intensity, you have also keep another issue in mind, and this is the number of animals per square meter. Just one example, in our studies, we were, and others researchers have the same outcome, we were able to see that hens, in Germany we keep, if we use the maximum stocking densities, 4.8 hens per square meter, in contrast to toms, 2.8 toms per square meter. So they were able to show, or we were able also to show, that hens did suffer twice as often from pododermatitis in the 16th week of life, for instance, as toms. And this is because there are more animals kept per square meter, so more feces, more wet litter, which automatically results in diarrhea, pododermatitis, infectious disease, etc. So the number of animals is also an important issue. And I talked already about group size. Apart from this, the literature is unique in the opinion that the structuring of the stable with resting areas in turkeys is necessary. Looking at purges, at all the literature, it also always is said that the purges might have negative effects, for instance, on those breast muscle alterations. However, we do have a lot of variety in the experimental designs. And in newer publications, this doesn't occur anymore, so we know exactly which hay, which material, etc., is recommended to avoid this. And this is, you see here, turkey hens sitting on the food chain, on these sharp-edged food chains. So it should obviously be not sharp-edged purges. And space on the purge is also an issue. If you do have the ideal purges or purging options, then you do have a lot of positive effects again on animal welfare. For instance, partially reduction of stocking density and a clear reduction of injurious feather picking. And we don't leave the farmer alone. It's just again one example of a model project. We can give him ideas on how to do this, especially also on looking at his work time, the costs, etc., etc. So there's enough in the literature to give the farmer hints with those requirements. Outdoor climate area obviously has a good, has advantages on animal welfare, but not every outdoor climate area is the same. You do see a bad one with a high stocking density, wet walls. They had a wet litter here inside, and the risk of injuries here on these old wooden sticks as well. So if it's ideal, like here, it should be offered starting when the birds are feathered, so 6 weeks of life. And there are experimental described positive influences on behavior, walking ability, respiratory tract diseases, and heart diseases. So those are avoided. In principle, you would estimate that you do see the same positive effects with outdoor runs. However, we couldn't find a statistical experimental study on this. But obvious, this might be the case from a veterinarian standpoint. The problem with outdoor runs is, and I remember a study of France from a French researcher who looked at 44 different farms with outdoor run, and he was not able to give a statistical survey because every outdoor run was different from the other. And that is the problem with the results concerning outdoor run. What we know as veterinarians, we do see much more infectious agents in outdoor runs, and mortality is higher because of predators. So you should have measurements for this. Birds should be adapted to climatic conditions. And especially this is one of our research projects, but it's again described in literature as well, with ecological kept turkeys. Those were not better. If you look, for instance, at pododermatitis, we nearly had the same amount of pododermatitis in ecological kept turkeys. And this is often due to wet outdoor runs, bad weather, etc., etc. Litter is a major issue for animal health, And if you look at the requirements or the recommendations in the different countries, it's always said the litter must be clearly loose, dry, clean, etc., etc. But that's subjectively. If we go to a farm and we do see this horrible litter, and we do see a lot of pododermatitis, and we ask the farmer, why is this litter so wet? He says, well, I think the litter is clear and dry and clean. So the problem is it's very subjectively to estimate litter. That's why we say it has in every requirement or recommendation or in every regulation, there should be the value of 30% within the regulation, because this is derived from a lot of experimental designs, and it's proven that the litter moisture should not exceed 30%, no matter whether it's under the drinking cups or whatever. And with this value, if this is included, and we just discussed this already at our agricultural ministry, then the authorities, the veterinarians, as well as the farmers have a value they can work with. Lighting is a huge factor. Birds have another rhesus than men. Just one example, those birds come from open forests, and daylight is not daylight. So if you say we recommend daylight, it's not clearly deduced, and there are significant differences. And the other thing, I was astonished, in most recommendations, 20 lux is recommended, and I could not find any single literature or publication on this. And I asked some of those researchers I know, and they said, well, we do know under 10 lux, it has negative advantages. Birds don't see so much, etc., etc. So we assume that it just was doubled for the recommendation. What we know from the research is that turkeys prefer different light intensities for sleeping, activity, feeding, and so on. But it's difficult to get this included in a modern farm management. And the major point for me is animal care and monitoring. And due to our 20 years old experience now, the farmer and the workers, mostly paid with a very low salary, often not able to speak the language of the country, these are the most important persons for animal welfare. And in this case, for instance, the farmer just went swimming with his children because it was a nice day. And so our, and the recommendation of most researchers is there should be a record of surveillance, especially in birds with intact peaks. And fortunately, this is increasing in Germany. So we have a lot of farmers who try to keep the turkeys with intact peaks. And it should be several day checks as well as surveillance or records on the enrichment material, a lot of literature on the different enrichment material. So again, we can recommend the farmers different things. And also all people in contact with the animal must have knowledge and should attain courses. As again, Lower Saxon has started these courses. I'm very interested in how this works. And it's recommended for the farmers, and they don't get any allowance to debeak their birds until they don't have attended those courses. Maybe this is the way. Okay, this is 100 pages in 12 minutes. Thank you for your attention. I couldn't cover all. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for your presentation, Professor. I think it gave us a very good basis of knowledge and understanding of how complex these turkeys are and the needs and requirements they have if they are farmed. Thank you for that. I will now give the floor to Ms. Kirsten Vornhagen from DG Santa, who will tell us more about the work of the EU Reference Center on Poultry and other small farmed animals. Dear Kirsten, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much. Good morning to everybody. And thank you for the invitation and the possibility to give an overview on what we are doing. Next slide, please. In my presentation, I will give an overview on the current situation concerning animal welfare legislation applicable to turkeys. I see I can go very quickly because this was said already now. I will show some fields where the Commission has taken action and where it plans to do so, and give an overview on the planned actions and their timing. Next slide, please. Well, this is very quickly. There's EU animal welfare legislation, which is applicable to turkeys. This is the Directive 98/58 concerning protection of animals kept for farming purposes, but there's no specific legislation on turkeys. The Transport Regulation 1/2005 applies to turkeys, and so does the regulation on slaughter and killing of animals. Sorry, the 1099 from 2009. Next slide, please. The Commission policy on animal welfare is not restricted to legislative proposals. It supports also non-legislative measures such as developing best practices, recommendations, conducting audits in member states and third countries. And it designated European Union reference centers for animal welfare. The objective of these reference centers is to support member states in the implementation of existing animal welfare legislation. Next slide, please. The support relates to 5 main areas with details laid down in the work programs of the centers. One of them is using their scientific and technical experience. The reference centers are asked to provide coordinated assistance to the member states. The aim is that these centers develop to become the central contact point in the EU for such technical assistance. The reference center also provides scientific and technical evidence in order to design animal welfare indicators. And they are asked to carry out scientific and technical studies on the welfare of animals, to conduct training courses, and to disseminate research findings and technical innovations. Next slide, please. Up to now, the Commission designated 3 European Union welfare centers, animal welfare reference centers. In 2018, the first center was designated as responsible for pigs. In 2019, the Commission designated a second center, which is the one for poultry and other small farmed animals. And the third center was designated this year in 2021, and it's responsible for ruminants and equines. Important for the subject of today's meeting is the second center, responsible for poultry and other small farmed animals. Small farmed animals include, for example, rabbits, and poultry means any poultry species, thus apart from chickens, also, for example, ducks, geese, and turkeys. And they refer to any age, from chicks to pullets to laying hens. And in addition, all reference centers deal with all aspects important for the welfare of the concerned species, which means on-farm transport and slaughter. Next slide, please. In the work programs, the Commission agrees with the centers on priority areas of their work. And with the Poultry Center, the Commission identified 5 priority areas. They concentrate in the first 3 years, in the first year on the first 3 priority areas. And these are the assessment of the welfare of broilers on farm, the assessment of the welfare of laying hens in all systems, but with a focus on alternative rearing systems. And thirdly, an assessment of consciousness after water bath stunning for broilers and for turkeys. And further priority areas were defined, and these are the transport to slaughter of broilers, turkeys, and spent hens, which are hens at the end of their laying period, and also on-farm killing of spent hens. While I must say this 5th priority area this year we exchanged. And we said for us, it's now also in the context of the European Citizens Initiative and the cage age, it's more important to look into rabbits. So we decided to exchange this to rabbits on farm, the welfare of rabbits on farm. Next slide, please. The output documents that the reference centers prepare are connected to the priority work areas and to the responsibilities and tasks as laid down in the official controls regulation, what I explained earlier. And just to indicate some examples, the Poultry Center in the first year of its operation compiled lists of relevant welfare indicators, described the validity and reliability of certain validated indicators. It listed and described improvement methods for the assessment of welfare and listed topics and for scientific studies. Next slide, please. The output of the reference center prepares is connected to the priority work. And as I just said, this is indicated. One of the outputs is also to have a EU website, and the Poultry Center developed a website. The address is indicated here. And over time, more and more outputs and information on poultry and other small farmed animals will be added to this site. Next slide, please. In the farm to fork strategy that the Commission adopted last year, the Commission committed to revise the EU animal welfare legislation. This revision will also address the legal acts mentioned in the beginning of this presentation, and one of the basic commitments is that this revision will be based on science. The Commission therefore submitted a number of mandates to the European Food Safety Authority, EFSA, requesting opinions concerning the welfare of certain animals. In 2020 and 21, the Commission submitted mandates to EFSA requesting scientific opinions on the welfare of farms. And these opinions address, for example, pigs, calves, and dairy cows, and also poultry, but they don't address turkeys. In 2020, the Commission also forwarded a mandate on transport, and this mandate addresses free-moving animals, such as equids, cattle, calves, and pigs, and also animals which are usually transported in containers. And these also address specifically turkeys. The opinion is expected to be delivered in June 22. There's no additional mandate for slaughter because EFSA is already working on slaughter mandates. Next slide, please. The revision of the EU animal welfare legislation will follow the steps foreseen by the legislative process. And given that this legislative process is due to be proposed by the end of 23, the timeline is rather dense. An inception impact assessment, a public consultation, and an impact assessment are planned to be finalized in 2022. And also the opinions of the Food Safety Authority will constitute the necessary scientific basis. The welfare of turkeys on farm, as I said, is currently covered by the directive on the protection of animals kept for farming purposes. And this directive is part of the legislation to be revised in 2023. We do not foresee to propose specific requirements for the welfare of turkeys on farm in this 2023 proposal. The reason is that we cannot address everything at the same time. This is also true for EFSA. The colleagues just cannot deliver scientific opinions on every issue in this short time period, and we just have to prioritize. but we see a necessity to cover the welfare of turkeys also in future EU animal welfare legislation. This is why, when revising the legislation, the Commission intends to propose empowerments, allowing specific welfare requirements to be introduced for certain species at a later stage. As regards transport, turkeys are included in the current EFSA mandate. The scientific opinion is expected in June 22, and the results will be considered when revising the regulation on animal welfare during transport. Next slide, please. As a summary, turkeys are within the scope of responsibilities of the EU Reference Center for Animal Welfare for poultry and other small farmed animals. They are included in the work program of that center since its designation. Turkey welfare will be considered in the context of the planned revision of EU animal welfare legislation in Directive 98/58, the transport and killing regulations, and proposing specific requirements for the welfare of turkeys on farm is envisaged after 2023, when EFSA opinions are available and on the basis of empowerments if the co-legislators agree to foresee them. Next slide, please. More information on the Commission activities in the area of animal welfare in general and on turkeys in specific can be found on the Commission's animal welfare webpage, which is indicated here. Next slide, please. Thank you very much for your attendance. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kirsten, for your presentation. It was a very informative oversight of the work of the Commission so far, and I'm happy to hear that turkeys are included also in the revision of the legislation. I don't see any questions yet. I just want to remind you all that you can use the Q&A function on the bottom of your screen to raise your questions, and we will discuss them later. But first, I would like to give the floor to René Arts. He is a turkey farmer from the Netherlands. Dear René, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. I try to speak in English as good as possible. Maybe not every word I find, but I think everybody will understand.
Share the button.
Can you see it?
Yes, we can see your slides. You only need to start the presentation, please. Ik denk dat het onder weergeven is.
Weer.
Oh, ja.
Weergeven.
Presenteren. Yeah, back to English.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm happy that I can tell also a little bit about turkeys as a turkey farmer. We have in the Netherlands since a few years beter leven kalkoenen. That is a higher welfare system for turkeys. Yeah, we are relatively happy with the system. It's a nice system, and at this moment we are with 5 farmers in the Netherlands who have that beter leven turkeys. The turkeys get slaughtered in Germany, by Geestland, and then go back to the Netherlands, and where they are in the supermarkets. And because the beter leven system is in Holland also by broilers a very big system, who is going to be bigger and bigger, especially by broilers, and we hope also by turkeys. Yeah, my name is René Aerts, but I told you already. We live in the south of the Netherlands, in IJsselstein. We have 17,000 turkeys, 4 barns, and with the beter leven system, We have females and males. In the past, sometimes we had also alone females or males. That was by the regular turkeys, but by the Beter Leven system, we have to, as hatch, we have to buy them. So we get at this moment about 8,500 females and 8,500 males.
Yeah.
There are 4 big differences in when you compare it with the regular turkey market. The first big thing is the RAS. We use the slower growing turkeys. At this moment, Caringa Cartier from Hendrik Genetics. Also, Aviagen has a few races who are available, but are registered, I must say it good, but they are not so good available. So in practice, at this moment, we have only the Caringa Cartier. You see in the photo a building, My Star building. Yeah, that's late. You see how it started. At this moment, they are a few days old. And in the middle, you see the fence from the border from the males and the females.
Oh.
Yes. Another big difference is what also the other speakers already mentioned: the stocking density. By males we go till 40 kilogram per square meter, and by females till 36 kilogram. In practice, that means that we go by males till two males per square meter, and females about 3.6 per square meter. And of course, that's a difference, what already mentioned, with the normally QNS. QNS is the German quality and Sicherheit system, and there we go by females till 52 and by males till 58. That's the normal system. And yeah, of course, that is for farmers nice with this density to work, but like always, the economics must be okay. That is always the problem by this type of things, but it's nice for working, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, the very, very big difference is the Wintergärten. This is a picture of one of my schoolboy who was working here for his school a few months, and the turkeys, the Caringa Cartier, was just going in the Wintergärten. You see, later we must make now the water system that is not hanging. We have the plafond drinkers there. We use the normally shavings, but yeah, as we open always the gates, then the turkeys directly go into the Wintergärten. And yeah, what I want to say about the Wintergärten, what I like very much is, I always say it's the best controlled system for welfare by turkeys, because if there can no wild birds can come in a building, we can very good clean and disinfect the building. The turkeys can look. If you look to the left, you can see the wall and the concrete wall, and the 75 till 80 centimeters. So the turkeys can look outside when the curtain is totally open. And yeah, for me it's very important. We can clean it very good, the floor, we can clean the building, they can look outside. It's for me the best system. No animals, no birds can come in. If we just speak about turkeys outside, but really into the really outside. But then there is one very big problem, in my opinion, and that is the disaster disease, blackhead. Yeah, if you have a turkey farmer blackhead, 10 years ago, I had also one time blackhead. Yeah, blackhead is really a disaster. Then you can have, for your turkeys, it's a disaster. And emotionally for the farmer, it's also a disaster. So I prefer for higher welfare, absolutely, this type of building. I already have this, what you see now, that Wintergärten is about 18 years old already. I built it in 2004. So I have 4 barns and I have 4 wintergärtens, and 2 wintergärtens from that 4. I have already from 2004, 1 from 2006, and 1 from 2014. So that is for the wind. Yeah, another big difference is we need to have a daylight curtain. If you look to the right, you see that that we have daylight curtains. In the past, we had other type of curtains, more dark, a little bit because we were sometimes afraid when in the night when some light was coming by some car or by some tractor or by some, but that they shine in. But yeah, it's not relative going. That I just changed because we had wintergärtens very long period, but no daylight curtain, and it's daylight curtain or daylight system when you have more isolation, then you need no curtains, but you need another type, and then it's more for the start, because in the start the building must be about 35 degrees, and then you cannot use curtains. That's not so economically and not so good for the gas using this society. Yeah. Yeah, that's another type of wintergarten what I have. It is a wintergarten. You can build it totally near the buildings, or you can make a little bit behind, that you, when you don't have the place everywhere, that you still can build a system. The wintergarten is about 25 till 30% of the totally normally building from the normal building. And then you have, when you don't have place in all the farms, because farms are from the history built maybe a little bit too close by each other, or they have more around the house or something else, you have the possibility for turkeys, because turkeys go everywhere. We check it a few times, that yeah, you have the possibility to build that wintergartens. And yeah, maybe as a summary, I already have wintergartens 18 years, and I like it very much, and I think the turkeys also like it very much. Yes, yeah, and this is the Beter Leven system with 1 star. Beter Leven has also 2 stars or 3 stars, but then is what I told you, they go more outside, really outside, and this is, in my opinion, the best control system. They look outside, but they are well controlled. No wild animals, no wild birds, for also diseases, for blackhead, avian influenza. So yeah, in my opinion, this is the best system. At this moment, I think this is my presentation. And of course, when there are questions, I'm happy to answer the questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, René, for your presentation. We will now move on to the questions from our colleagues in the room and the audience. Reineke, can you start with the questions?
Yes, sure, Anja. We have several questions to all the speakers, but before we will go to that, I would like to invite Sarah to come back again and to also share with us if she's satisfied after hearing the presentations and after hearing also the Commission's plans about the new legislation. Sarah, what do you think?
Ja, vielen Dank für das Wort. Ich wollte erst einmal etwas zu dem Vorredner sagen mit dem Wintergarten. Ich finde es ehrenwert, dass Sie sich bemühen um eine viel bessere Puttenhaltung, wie es sonst in den Ländern in Europa läuft. Ich war da, ich habe mir das angeschaut, ich war in vielen verschiedenen Stellen. Allerdings möchte ich Ihnen, ohne Ihnen nahe zu treten, widersprechen, wenn Sie sagen, geschlossener Wintergarten ohne Auslauf, ohne Wetter ist das Beste für die Puten. Das wäre so ein bisschen, als würden wir unsere Teenager auf dem Sofa festhalten, die mögen das auch und sagen, da ist es sicher, da gibt es keinen Autounfall oder so etwas, da habe ich das Kind unter Kontrolle. Also ich denke, die Raubvögel-Problematik könnte man auch anders lösen. Das wollte ich nur mal vorab sagen. Aber ich habe tatsächlich eine Frage an die Kommission. das ist ja, wie wir gehört haben, ein wichtiger Punkt, dass die Pute das drittmeist geschlachtetste Tier in der EU ist. Das möchte ich wiederholen. Jetzt höre ich zu meiner großen Enttäuschung, es hat keine Priorität. Sondern erst 2023 soll etwas passieren. Jetzt bin ich ein Neopolitiker, deswegen würde ich gern von Ihnen wissen, kann denn die EFSA Ihrer Meinung nach nicht bis 2023 sozusagen eine Meinung bilden? Könnte man nicht schon jetzt alle Vorsteps machen, damit dann wirklich, also ganz schnell, ein delegierter Rechtsakt möglich ist? Und vor allen Dingen eins, wenn man schon sagt, ja, man hat einfach keine Kapazitäten, kann man nicht wenigstens einen revidierten 98,58 EC, glaube ich, heißt das, Akt machen mit zumindest 2 bis 3 Artikeln zur Putenhaltung, die wenigstens einige wichtige Aspekte jetzt schon aufnehmen, um die Haltung zu regeln und dann andere Aspekte bei der Verordnung, bei dem delegierten Verordnung der Kommission regeln lassen, damit etwas passiert. Ich fürchte nämlich, sonst verlieren wir schon wieder 5, 6 Jahre, bis dann irgendwas auf dem Tisch ist. Und ich denke, wir sind uns alles im Klaren, dass die Zeit läuft und es brennt und wir mit jedem Tag, wo wir nicht etwas für die Puten machen, ein verlorener Tag ist und eigentlich, muss man sagen, eine Schande auch für uns.
Thank you, Sarah. Every day is a lost day for turkeys. Well said. Before we zoom in a bit on the winter gardens, because I think there are a lot of questions about that, and I would also like to seek René's and Professor Krautwald's opinion about that. Kirsten, would you like to come in and respond to Sarah's questions about the speed of the new legislation?
Yes, sure. Thank you. Well, what can I say? We are trying our best, and also EFSA is doing its best. As I said, we submitted really many mandates to EFSA, asking them to check for pigs, for calves, for dark geese quail right now, for dairy cows, for all the animals which are now covered by specific welfare legislation on farm, but also those where we think they should be looked at. Yeah, it's just we have to prioritize. And even we would not be, even if we would now send mandates to EFSA, in addition to those on which they are farming, it would not be possible to have them ready before we need to draft the legislation. Because here as well, it's not to write down specific articles. The whole legislative process, as I tried to indicate before, includes specific steps which are legally required, like impact assessment, like consultation of the public, and steps like these. So just to write certain articles is just not possible in the context of EU legislation. And also if you go into national legislation, also this is nothing that is done within a few weeks or months. But as I said, the priority is certainly there, and turkeys are on the list, very high up on the priority list to be looked at after 23. But well, we need to see. The Directive 98/58, the General Farming Directive, is a part of the revision process, and we will certainly look into that one for details and to see how to improve it. We know there are many issues which can be improved. So let's see if and how what we do will also be good for the turkeys. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kirsten, and thank you also for acknowledging the issues in turkey farming. I think this is very important. Sarah is asking an additional question. Could EFSA do their work before 2023? So could they work on an opinion about turkey welfare once they have finished the current opinions? Can you say anything meaningful about this?
Well, I hope I do say meaningful things.
Yes, of course.
Well, EFSA is working really, really hard on the mandates that we sent to them. And the last one, from a timing perspective, is to be finalized in March 2023. These are, for example, the ones for dairy cows and ducks, geese, and quail. They will barely be able to start to do something in parallel. But the Commission has decided to set up a roadmap to discuss with EFSA and to see when to submit further mandates and when these should be finalized then. And as I said, turkeys are very high up on the priority list also for these mandates. So we certainly have these animals in mind, and we know about the difficulties. And not only since this report is there, but the report is really useful in my view as well. Yes, I fully agree. These are animals which should be looked at, and we are doing our best, but it will not be possible before or in the 23 proposal.
Thanks so much, Kirsten, and I'm sure that Sarah has noted that turkeys are high on the priority list of the Commission, and will also take you up on that commitment. Let us move to some more specifics about turkey welfare, because we have lots of questions about winter gardens. So I would like to first ask you, René, to come back to some of these questions, and then to Professor Krautwald to shine your light on the advantages, but also the challenges with winter gardens. Firstly, let us remind Sarah's comment that winter gardens is not enough, that turkeys also need to freely roam. It would be good to hear your opinion about that, René. Then we have a question about, is it easy also to get permissions for winter gardens in the Netherlands? So can you easily get also an authorization? Then how often do the turkeys, how much time do the turkeys spend in the winter gardens? Is it accessible 24 hours a day? And is it also counted in the calculation of the indoor stocking density? So how does a winter garden also affect your stocking density? I leave it here to allow you to answer those questions. There are some more, but we come to those later. René?
Okay, I write the questions. The first question is, yes, the wintergarten is 24 hours per day open. And do you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh.
Perfect.
Yeah, because we see something on our computer, but I don't know what it is. But the wintergarten is 24 hours open, and the turkeys, I hear sometimes from broiler farmers that they have some, they must, in the evening, they do the broilers back into the buildings, but turkeys do that self. I have also climate control. That means the curtains go by computer, they can close. So when it's going a little bit colder, then the curtains close, and then still the turkeys can stay in the wintergarten. It's 24 hours open, and also in the night they stay in the wintergarten. That is a little bit colder. Only in the winter time, if it's really cold outside, then it's going to be, when it's more colder than about 8-9 degrees outside and a little bit wind. But the curtain, what I told you, I have curtains, so in principle the wind cannot go into the building because the curtains closed then. But if it's really cold, colder than about 8 degrees, then they go inside self. So that is the first thing from the 24 hours. The stocking density, yeah, that's with that 40 kilo by males and 36 by females, is also the wintergarten is. We can also how can I say that in good English? Included with that, yeah. That it's included. So for the stocking density and the permission, in Holland, that is a very good question. In the past, you get relative easy permission. Now it's a little bit different which type of building, where you live. If you live in province Brabant or you live in a province, other province is also a difference. So the permission is not always so simple. That is true. Especially there is a big opportunity for the broilers. They were 1 January 23. All the broiler farmers, when they want to produce for the Beter Leven system, and all the supermarkets in Holland only want Beter Leven broilers, they need to have a wintergarten. And when some farmers now must build it, it's not always so simple for the permission. So that is a lot of things you hear, a lot of people talk about it, and we want more animal welfare, and then we need to get permission, but it has also to do with with ammonia, with environment. So it's sometimes not so simple. That is true. That is true.
And then there was a last comment from Sarah. Do you agree that ideally turkeys should also roam around and go outside the winter garden?
Yeah, Sarah mentioned that for my big what I always have bad feelings when that is that blackhead. I had one time in my life blackhead. I'm now about 51 years old. Then I was 41 and I had blackhead, and I had about 40%. That was in the normal building, of course, in the normal building, but I had then about 40% of my turkeys dead because you cannot treat for blackhead. And that is absolutely for my emotional and for everything so bad, and for the turkeys. And if turkeys go outside, a lot of people say that the chance of blackhead is much bigger. So I always have, that is what I can say from the practical side. Maybe Sarah has other some other research or scientific thing, but we hear always when turkeys go outside, the risk of blackhead is much and much and much bigger. And that is why I like so much the wintergarten. We can clean it, we can disinfect it. It's a concrete floor. It's toch like you are almost outside. Yeah, what I told you before a few times, I like it.
May I just comment from a veterinarian standpoint, because we just currently have a project on Auburn and Kelly's, so very slow growing races, outdoor run. And what we did see is, in fact, with histomoniasis, you mentioned blackhead, we have a problem, but those were suffering from green liver diseases and infectious arthritis, and this was a big problem, and they were kept ecologically, and they couldn't use antibiotics, obviously, so a lot of those turkeys died. And what Sarah said is right. We do see those turkeys suffering from infectious diseases a lot. Predators are not a problem, I think, if you do a good outdoor run or free range, but the infectious diseases, especially in those ecological kept slow growing turkeys, we can't treat histomoniasis, for instance. We have no treatment, so birds just die, as you said, blackhead. And with the green liver disease, this is a big problem, and with the infectious arthritis. On the one hand, we don't want to use antibiotics, which I totally agree. But on the other hand, as a veterinarian, you come into those herds, free range is ideal. I personally, if I'm a turkey, I would like to live in a free range. But it is right, we do have a lot of problems. And I was wondering, because you said it's fully counted, I told it outdoor run, but it's winter garden as well. Normally in most countries, it's counted to the barn area only 20 to 25%. So it's fully counted to the stocking density? Because
it's fully counted. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So
And
it's different.
Professor Krautwald, here we also have someone commenting by saying that blackhead is a problem of wetness. You need good soil in free range. So where do you see the solutions? Because clearly from an animal perspective, it's very important that they can roam around, that they have more space, and that they have access to outdoor.
Sure, but it's not so easy to avoid wet litter or wet outdoor runs. It's not so easy. Especially, we do have also wet litter, for instance, in those winter gardens, if the weather is bad, it's raining, etc. So you have to be aware that you can't say, this is the solution. We're talking about animals and about nature, if they in the free range. So we visited so many farms with outdoor range, as well as other researchers. And it's much more work for the farmers. And sometimes you just stay there and say, okay, I can't do anything. If the pictures I showed you with the outdoor run, with the wet earth, etc., you can't do every second something against it. And then we do have the risk of pododermatitis, as I told you, infectious diseases as well. So you just have to be aware that outdoor runs have a higher risk of infectious diseases, maybe sometimes higher antibiotics use, as well as those diseases derived from nature, bad weather, wet earth, etc. And that's it.
That's it. You have to take that into account.
You have to take this into account.
Adapt your husbandry practices to that. And Professor Krautwald, before I go back to Anja, because she also has some questions for you, you didn't mention anything in your presentation on breeds and the growth rate of the turkeys. What is your opinion about that? Because René mentioned here he is using a slower growing breed. Are you in favor of that?
So we've mainly focused in the report on the conventional kept BUTs, etc., because it would have been too long. But what I showed shortly is that we had in the general remarks a chapter on breeds and on differences and comparison in the literature on the different breeds. As I said, we just currently have a project on Auburn, which are very slow growing birds, and on Kellys, and in the literature as well, those breeds are compared, but the conclusion is not unique. I mean, sure, those birds have often, because they are normally kept under ecological circumstances, a lower stocking density, etc., etc. So if you compare those to conventional BUTs, you obviously have a multifactorial survey, and that's problematic because the conventional are kept in higher stocking densities, they have no outdoor run, and you compare them to other breeds kept under different conditions. But what I can tell you, pododermatitis is my favorite subject. We do see as lot pododermatitis in Kellys, and also they are slow growing and they don't gain so much weight. We do see a lot of pododermatitis, and this depends on the natural circumstances, outdoor run, etc.
Thank you. Thanks for that explanation. Anja, I'm going back to you. You have also some questions, and then please hand back to me again because we still have lots of questions from the floor.
Well, thank you, Reineke. I have two questions. The first one is for René. I'm very interested because we heard a lot about how you raise the turkeys. I'm also very interested in how you to hear something about the methods on catching, loading, and slaughter. Can you tell us something about that? In the slaughterhouse, for instance, what is the method of stunning? How they are caught? Can you say something about that? And I have, before I go to you for your answer, I have another question for Professor Krautwald. I have to say that I'm a bit concerned after hearing your presentation to hear that all kinds of materials and enrichment that we offer the animals, different housing systems, they all have their own specific animal welfare problems. And I was wondering, can you tell us if you saw any good systems so far that don't harm the animals? Or let me rephrase that. Are there systems thinkable in which the welfare of the turkeys are fully guaranteed, while at the same time they can fully explore their natural behavior at the same time? But first, let me go to René.
Yes, I write the two questions. The loading, there I can say the most because I'm self the turkey farmer, so the loading is my part more. Reloading them at the door by some loading lift, so then we get them in some lift, and then it goes high on the truck, and yeah, we loading them this at the same way what is normally used in Germany. We had some system in Holland in the past where we get the containers out of the truck and drive by some money to in the building, and the turkeys don't have to walk. But when the turkeys relatively good walk, then they walk to the door and they get on that lift. We call it a loading lift, and it goes slowly high, and then about 4 people put them into the container from the truck. That is the same system as what we had by the regular turkeys. Every system has some good things and maybe not so good things, but that is how we loading at this moment. From the slaughtering, I cannot say so much because I'm not the processing plant. I know only that the rules is that you by Beter Leven that the processing plant need to have CO2. How can I say it in good English? They use CO2-verdoving in Dutch.
CO2 stunning.
Yes, and that is what I know about the processing plant. But for the processing plant, yeah, I cannot say you so much because I am not processing plant, so I not know more from that than what I can tell you now. Yeah, the loading, of course, we try to do as good as possible, and yeah, that is.
René, are the birds carried upright? What is a?
Yeah, no, by that lift, and then they get a little bit. Yeah, they get a little bit slowly pushed into that container from that lift. So yeah, with 2 hands, yeah.
But they are not taken by the legs.
No.
Okay, and there's an additional question related to this, because someone is saying in the chat that turkeys need more space. They need 80 centimeters in the crates when being transported, whereas the regulation only requires 40 centimeters. How is that working with your turkeys?
Yeah, then I must exactly, at this moment, I cannot say exactly. Then I must make some.
Okay, no worries.
Maybe I can do just a remark, because I just did another expert report, but on chickens, on slaughtering, and it said, I can't state whether this is right or wrong, that if the birds have more space during transport, they get more nervous and they hurt much more themselves. So it's wished from the standpoint of the reviewers of these publications that they are very calm, and if they're sitting, they're much calmer than if they're standing. But this is just one publication I found.
Yeah, that is true. That is absolutely true.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that. And Professor Krootwald, could you respond to Anja's question? If you know any really state-of-the-art higher welfare turkey systems you would recommend as an example?
Okay, I showed you one picture about these forest turkeys. Have you this in mind? I like this. And behind every tree is a turkey, but this is unrealistic, you know, to get this whole over the world turkey keeping in forests. What I wanted you to understand with my presentation is that we don't deal with a car construction or something, so which is ideal. Huh? We have mechanical systems which work. These are live animals, and this is nature. if we look about outdoor runs, for instance. So it's always a compromise in the keeping. So you have to decide which kind of compromise you want. If you want, I would prefer the outdoor run or the free range, obviously, and I like the winter garden. But you have to keep in mind that nothing is without disadvantages. Just because these turkeys have a very hypertrophic breast muscle, for instance. So what I said about perches, we recommend perches, but you have to keep in mind how to construct the perches. Otherwise, it has negative effects because the shift of center of gravity is altered in those turkeys. And okay, so it's always a compromise. But if you ask me what is an ideal keeping, I would say these forest turkeys. I like it because they have shadow to hide, but they have their problems with infectious diseases. We are the veterinarians of this flock.
Sure. Because
we don't have enough forests for our turkeys. In Germany, we have, I think, 35 million turkeys, not enough forests.
Well, I think the planet would benefit from more forests and perhaps also from less farmed animals.
Sure.
So I think it's a different way of thinking, and of course there's an animal based aspect, and then there's also another aspect, and that is how to make it commercially viable. There's also a question about.
This is what I wanted to express, is that you can't say just outdoor run or perch or whatever, or occupational material, the same. You have to, and this is why we have these researches and publications we can trust on normally. And so we have to recommend different perches, or say outdoor run, be aware that there is a higher infectious risk.
Sure. Thanks for that. We have more questions, but before I will try to still discuss those, I would like to invite Sarah to come back in again and share some additional thoughts with us. Sarah.
Vielen Dank, dass ich noch einmal das Wort ergreifen möchte. Ich möchte es präzisieren. Es gibt natürlich alternative Landwirtschaftssysteme sowie agropastorale Systeme, wo man kleine Wälder anlegt und Puten halten lässt. Ich habe mir das angeschaut, auch in Österreich. Und es gibt auch in Deutschland Waldputensysteme. Da werden sie nicht total im Wald, sondern am Waldrand gehalten. Das wäre sicher eine Möglichkeit, über die wir reden müssen, wenn wir über Putenhaltung reden. Aber ich wollte noch einen wichtigen Punkt beisteuern, von dem ich denke, dass wir komplexer und von Anfang an anders denken müssen. Nämlich das Problem der Pute und der Krankheiten fängt bei der Zucht an. Wir züchten von Anfang an deformierte, geschwächte Tiere und wundern uns dann, dass sie dann bestimmte Krankheitsanfälligkeiten haben und wir dann sozusagen wie in einer Laborsituation dann Tiere halten müssen, damit sie nicht mit der Natur konfrontiert werden. Wenn wir über eine wesensgemäße Haltung reden, dann müssen wir ganz dringend unsere Putenzucht ändern, die Elterntiere ändern und robustere, kleinere Rassen züchten und dann natürlich auch nicht hier die Putenbrust essen und den Rest nach Afrika verschiffen oder nach Asien, weil uns das sowieso nichts wert ist. Ich weiß, Sie wissen das alles, das sind prinzipielle Aussagen, aber ich möchte doch den Fokus wieder darauf richten, auf die Ursachen und nicht so sehr immer auf die Symptombekämpfung, die wir dann sehr oft noch immer Schritt bei Schritt verschlimmern. Und deswegen war es mir wichtig, das nochmal zu betonen. Dankeschön.
Ich hätte noch eine Frage.
Thank you, Sarah. One moment. I will come to you for a final comment. Whilst you were talking, Sarah, someone from the audience is agreeing with you, saying that the future is dual use of more of agricultural land, forestry production in combination with animal husbandry. So the whole regenerative agriculture discussion. He can show us if we want. We don't have time for that, I'm afraid, but I'm sure the conversation will continue also after today. So one final question for all panelists. Why is there so little attention, or has there been so little attention for turkey welfare compared to other species such as broiler chickens or laying hens? Why are turkeys forgotten animals, whereas they are the third most slaughtered animal in the EU? Can you give your final remarks on that, and anything else you would like to say before I hand back to Anja to close the meeting? Professor Krautwald?
Maybe just come back to Sarah Wiener's comment, because this is one thing that interests me a lot. The breed is a major concern. I agree totally. And the breed is done in the States and England. So how can we influence the breed of those turkeys? And this often is when I talk to this about with my students, they say, well, we can't influence it anyway, so we better leave it. So I have no idea how we can influence this. And this is maybe one point as well, you know, in the discussion of the breeds.
Thank you. Final reaction on why you think there is less attention for turkeys and what needs to happen to change that?
It's just a commercial point, I think. Turkeys are minor minor groups. So it's not so many turkeys we keep, in contrast to chickens and broilers, to laying hens and broilers.
Okay, thank you. Kirsten, a final word from you.
Yes, thank you, and thank you as well for this discussion. I think these were really informative questions and informative answers as well. I don't know why this is not dealt with so far so much, but I think there are many people in the Commission, but also in the member states, having turkey welfare in their minds. And as far as I know, a lot is going on. I mean, this study, what's going on in Austria, Lower Saxony was mentioned, and your example of the farmer shown today. I'm really certain there are many people having turkey welfare in mind and trying to improve the situation. From the Commission side, you know, we have not changed legislation for many years now. We are tackling this now, and because there's so much to do, and because there are so many species and categories and circumstances to look at and to update, yeah, I can just repeat, we have to prioritize, but we have turkeys in mind, and we are happy about what's going on in member states and elsewhere to have as much information as possible. So once we do take this on board, we will be happy to have this information to base on and to discuss. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kirsten. René, a final word from you before we close.
Yes, yeah, in my opinion, the turkey industry, the two big genetic, Hendrix Genetics and BUT Aviagen, they work relatively hard on to get better legs. If I can speak about 20 years ago and now, when you compare how the legs are at this moment, I can say, in my opinion, let me say the BUT Big Six from now with the legs and also the converter, they are much better than 20 years ago. So as a farmer, I can say the legs are much better, in my opinion, of course, that's my opinion. The question was maybe why there was not so much welfare in the turkey industry comparing to the broilers and the pigs. Yeah, I as a farmer, where I live, yeah, the Beter Leven turkeys in Holland is relative active and popular. Let me say in the supermarket, in principle, only the Beter Leven turkey, not other turkey meat. every year I go to Austria on holiday, and when I look then in the supermarkets and also in Austria, I think also they work good on that, and I heard the farmers are relatively happy. So in my opinion, but that's of course another opinion than your opinion, there has been worked on welfare, but is it enough or not enough? That's always the big question. Yeah.
Thanks so much, René, also for being with us today. Anja, there's lots of questions, and I'm sorry we couldn't address them all. I would like to invite everyone to get in touch with the Intergroup Secretariat after this meeting, and we can put you in touch with the experts to continue the debate and to keep turkey welfare high on the agenda. Anja, over to you for your closing remarks.
Yes, thank you, Reineke. Well, I'm very triggered by the final words that we heard from René. Is it enough? That's the question. Let me start by thanking all speakers for today's informative presentations and the constructive discussion we had afterwards. I hope that the ongoing fitness check will provide the necessary means for an improvement to the welfare of turkeys on farms in Europe. This is very much needed. And we, as the Animal Welfare Intergroup, look forward to seeing how the Commission will include the welfare of turkeys in its revision of the animal welfare legislation. And I have to say, I'm still very concerned for the welfare of these animals. And I truly hope that we can end their suffering once and for all, and the sooner the better. Thank you again for your attention. The Animal Welfare Intergroup will hold its next monthly session on fish welfare on Thursday, the 21st of October. And for the time being, it will remain an online session. We look very much forward to seeing you then. And for now, have a good day. Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.